are. You trying for the bitches. I see.
We've been acting like this for what, 6 years?
6 years.
Now, it ain't always right. I'll be the first one to say, I'm on the path. If you could forgive her.
It all started years ago, when small, seemingly insignificant moments began to come together to reveal a much bigger picture. Beneath the surface, there had always been a sense of tension and unspoken friction between Dr. Simone Whitmore and Dr. Heavenly Kimes. They shared a complicated relationship, one that shifted between friendship and rivalry. Over time, they had laughed together, argued, and tried to mend their differences. But despite their attempts to patch things up, something always felt off. Eventually, the topic of divorce started to surface, something neither of them could easily brush aside. Simone and Heavenly's bond had always been a bit rocky. Their dynamic was anything but stable, and their interactions often walked the line between genuine friendship and underlying conflict. It was clear to everyone that their connection was anything but ordinary. Despite the ups and downs, they tried to stay cordial, even though their differences were always lurking just beneath the surface. But then, the talks about divorce began. At first, it was easy to dismiss as one of Heavenly's typical jokes. She had a reputation for being outspoken, loud, and unfiltered, traits that often made her comments seem like harmless teasing. However, Heavenly's behavior soon took a turn. She began to bring up the idea of Simone's marriage and divorce over and over again, in a way that started to feel more serious. What had initially seemed like casual jokes started to feel like an agenda. Heavenly wasn't just being her usual messy self. There was something deeper at play. Simone started to notice this shift and, at first, tried to brush it off. She would roll her eyes and laugh, trying to stay calm. But as the comments continued and the topic of divorce became an obsession for Heavenly...
Why is everything against me? Tell her.
That you lie.
I don't, but this is what I'm not going to take on. I don't.
You have receipts on my husband.
I do.
That's a lie.
That's not a lie.
Simone realized that this wasn't just a passing phase or a joke anymore. Heavenly was pushing boundaries, testing Simone in ways that were impossible to ignore. For those who were watching from the outside, Heavenly's behavior might have seemed like just another example of her larger-than-life personality. She was known for making controversial statements and stirring the pot. It wasn't unusual for her to speak her mind, even if it meant causing some discomfort. But when it came to Simone's marriage, her remarks started to feel different. They weren't just random comments, they were calculated and pointed. Heavenly began to make subtle but sharp remarks about Simone's relationship with her husband, Sile. These comments hinted at problems that didn't even exist and created tension where there had been none. Simone's marriage, which had always seemed strong and stable, was suddenly being questioned in a very public way. What made this even more unsettling for Simone was how often Heavenly brought up the idea of divorce, even when it had nothing to do with the conversation. It became clear that Heavenly wasn't merely making offhand comments or joking around. She was deliberately inserting the topic of divorce into conversations where it didn't belong. Whether they were discussing something completely unrelated or just catching up as friends, Heavenly would find a way to steer the conversation back to divorce. It was as if she couldn't help but bring it up, almost obsessively. At first, Simone might have been willing to dismiss Heavenly's comments as just her usual behavior. After all, Heavenly had a history of speaking out of turn and stirring the pot. But the more this topic came up, the more Simone started to feel uncomfortable. It wasn't just about a passing remark anymore, it was a pattern. Heavenly was deliberately testing Simone, pushing her buttons, and trying to provoke a reaction. It was as if Heavenly was trying to see how much Simone could take before she cracked, or perhaps she was trying to uncover something deeper about their friendship and Simone's marriage. Simone's frustration grew as the conversations became more focused on her relationship with Sile. The constant insinuations about divorce, the repeated comments about their struggles, and the overall tone of the conversations made it clear that Heavenly wasn't just playing around. It was hard for Simone to ignore how much Heavenly seemed to be enjoying poking at the cracks in her marriage. There was a feeling that Heavenly knew exactly what she was doing. Every comment, every jab, was calculated to get under Simone's skin and make her question her own stability. As time went on,
I come with receipts and motherfucking invoices. Believe it. I come with receipts and motherfucking invoices. No,
Use a line, dirty bitch.
it became even clearer that this wasn't just playful banter. Heavenly had a mission, and it wasn't to repair their friendship or to offer helpful advice. Instead, it felt like she was more interested in creating tension, perhaps even driving a wedge between Simone and her husband. It was almost as if Heavenly saw Simone's marriage as a target, something she could use to keep the drama alive and maintain the spotlight. The more Simone tried to laugh it off, the more Heavenly seemed determined to push her buttons. For Simone, this was a tough pill to swallow. She had always tried to maintain her composure and keep things together, especially when it came to her marriage. But the constant questioning, the persistent remarks about divorce, and the ongoing tension with Heavenly left her feeling exposed and vulnerable. She had always valued her friendship with Heavenly, but now it was hard to ignore the growing sense of manipulation in their interactions. Eventually, Simone could no longer ignore what was happening. What started as harmless comments about divorce had evolved into something more toxic, and Simone had to decide how much more she was willing to tolerate. Her relationship with Heavenly had always been complicated, but now it felt like there was a deeper, more destructive force at play. Heavenly's obsession with Simone's marriage was no longer something Simone could laugh off or ignore. The tension that had been building for years had finally reached its breaking point, and the friendship that once seemed unbreakable was now on the verge of crumbling. In the end, it was clear that Heavenly's actions weren't just about making drama for the sake of drama. She had crossed a line, and Simone was no longer willing to play along. What had once been a friendship built on mutual respect and laughter had now become a battleground, with Heavenly relentlessly testing Simone's patience and pushing her boundaries. Whether Heavenly intended to tear their friendship apart or was simply trying to get a rise out of Simone, the damage had been done, and the tension between them would never be the same. As if she was waiting for someone to acknowledge that their relationship was failing, Heavenly somehow managed to steer the conversation toward divorce every time the subject of marriage came up. Let's not forget that Heavenly never liked Cecil, which added another layer of drama. She never concealed the fact that she had strong opinions about Simone's husband. She didn't like the way he spoke out and didn't like the way he responded to the lady's drama and didn't hesitate to express her lack of respect for him, so when she began making divorce-related remarks about Simone, it wasn't unexpected. However, the most bizarre part is that what if Heavenly's preoccupation with divorce wasn't actually about Simone? What if, in reality, Heavenly was projecting because, let's face it, people who bring up a certain subject repeatedly typically have a personal connection to it? Could it be that Heavenly noticed something in her own marriage that made her obsession with divorce? Whatever the case, Simone had had enough. She had ignored the comments, avoided the arguments, and taken the high road, but this time she wasn't letting Heavenly get away with it. Was she dealing with something behind closed doors that caused her to become overly preoccupied with other people's relationships, or was it all a diversion to avoid discussing her own reality by creating drama in someone else's? Dr. Heavenly Kimes has made a name for herself on Married to Medicine by embracing controversy. She is unapologetically outspoken, never backing down from expressing her opinions, no matter how harsh or unpopular they may be. Whether her words are considered acceptable or not, Heavenly doesn't hesitate to say exactly what's on her mind. For years, the women on the show have come to expect her bold, direct nature. They know that Heavenly will stir the pot, say things others wouldn't dare, and bring drama wherever she goes. It's part of her persona, and they've learned to accept it, even if it isn't always easy. But there's one topic that has become Heavenly's personal obsession: divorce. It's as though she can't help herself. No matter who's involved, Heavenly is always ready to comment on other people's marriages. She has taken it upon herself to critique the relationships around her, as if she's an expert in the field of love.
He didn't initially tell me first.
Oh, come on.
You didn't. I learned about it on freaking social. The girl said she had receipts. She was gonna send it to the shade room, and I came to you and I told you.
I'm gonna tell you.
That's how I found out.
And commitment. Her unsolicited advice, often uninvited, seems to come from a place of judgment rather than care. She doesn't hesitate to make predictions about the future of her friends' marriages, often laughing at their difficulties or struggles, almost as if their pain is something to be amused by. Heavenly's fixation on the topic is not just a passing comment here or there. She has made a habit of pointing out the flaws she perceives in other people's relationships, as if it's her duty to weigh in on their private lives. Whether it's commenting on Simone and Sile's marriage, Toya and Eugene's relationship, or any other couple on the show, Heavenly doesn't hold back. It's clear that she enjoys being the one to speak out and make others uncomfortable with her opinions. She will say what others are thinking, sometimes in a way that crosses the line. And she's not shy about making light of other people's struggles, even when they might be going through tough times in their marriages. When Heavenly's comments are called out, she doesn't apologize. Instead, she laughs it off as if it's all just part of her honest nature. Her go-to defense is always the same. She's just being herself, saying what others are too afraid to say. Heavenly dismisses any backlash by claiming that she doesn't mean to hurt anyone and that she's simply joking. If people are upset by her remarks, she brushes it off as them taking things too seriously. This is her way of deflecting criticism, by turning the situation into a joke and insisting that she was just being honest, even if her honesty feels more like an attack. This pattern has played out many times with the women on the show. Simone and Sile's marriage, for example, has been a frequent target for Heavenly's unsolicited commentary. Heavenly has made it clear, time and time again, that she feels entitled to discuss the state of their relationship, despite not knowing all the details. It's almost as if she believes that being blunt and outspoken makes her an authority on marriage, when in reality, it often feels like she's overstepping boundaries. She's not content with keeping her opinions to herself. Instead, she feels compelled to share them loudly and publicly, regardless of how it might make others feel. Heavenly's remarks about Toya and Eugene are another example of her tendency to make bold statements without concern for the consequences. She's been known to poke fun at their relationship and throw out suggestions or warnings, as if she's somehow better equipped to handle the challenges of marriage. It doesn't matter if she's being disrespectful or crossing a line. She's always quick to laugh it off and claim that it was all in good fun. The truth is, while Heavenly's remarks might be entertaining to some, they can come across as rude and inconsiderate to others. What some might see as her honest nature, others view as her inability to read a room or respect people's boundaries. But Heavenly's behavior isn't just random or spontaneous, it's calculated. She knows exactly what she's doing when she makes these remarks, and she's fully aware of the reactions they'll provoke. Every comment she makes, every criticism she offers, is carefully thought out. She knows that controversy generates attention, and Heavenly thrives on being the center of it. She knows that people will talk about her after she makes a bold statement, and that's exactly what she wants. In her mind, stirring the pot keeps her relevant and keeps the show exciting. Her approach is always direct, and her words are rarely soft. She doesn't sugarcoat things or try to cushion the blow. Instead, she cuts straight to the point, regardless of who might get hurt in the process. Her honesty, while sometimes refreshing, often feels more like an attack than a genuine attempt to offer advice. And for those who are on the receiving end of her comments, it can be hard to differentiate between her genuine opinions and her desire to provoke a reaction. They are meant to strike a chord. And in regards to Simone and Cecil, she's been unrelenting, despite the fact that they've moved past their marital difficulties and are now in a stable relationship. Heavenly keeps bringing up divorce as if she's waiting for it to happen. Why is she so obsessed with this subject? At first, it seemed like just another messy habit of hers, but the more she did it, the more evident it became that this wasn't just idle rumors. Something more profound because, let's face it, when someone repeatedly brings up a certain subject, there's usually a personal explanation. Could it be that Heavenly perceives something in her own marriage that she refuses to acknowledge, or that she's projecting her own anxieties and insecurities? For years, she imposed her own hardships on other women. Heavenly has portrayed herself as having the ideal marriage, boasting all the time about how much her husband, Dr. Damon, loves her and how solid their bond is. Built an empire together, but nobody really knows what's going on behind closed doors. If reality TV has taught us anything, it's that the people who shout the loudest about how great their marriage is are also the ones who hide the most. Therefore, the question is still whether Heavenly is criticizing Simone's marriage or if she is actually disclosing something about herself. One thing is certain, though, Simone isn't letting this go any longer, and when she does confront Heavenly, it will be a moment that nobody saw coming. But here's the startling part. Simone exposed Heavenly enough for months, not only by calling her out. For months, Simone Whitmore remained silent while listening to Dr. Heavenly Kimes talk about everything she had no business talking about, including divorce, Simone's marriage, other women's relationships, and everything else. She had made an effort to act morally and refrain from giving Heavenly the attention she so much wanted, but it kept happening in a group. Talk naturally. Heavenly found a way to bring up the subject of divorce in a casual way, but with the same arrogance and provocative energy that Simone had grown accustomed to. This time, Simone wasn't going to let it go easily. Instead, she confronted it head-on with. She smirked, rolled her eyes, and dismissed it as though Simone was exaggerating. "Oh girl, I was just talking," she likely said with a laugh. "Ain't nobody trying to come for you," but Simone wasn't having it. At that point, she confronted her with the truth, the actual truth that had been simmering beneath the surface for too long. "Heavenly, you are the last person who should be giving marriage advice." The room's vibe changed as Simone fired back her calm but strong voice because this was the reality. Heavenly had spent a lot of time criticizing other people's relationships but had never once been open about her own. She had made fun of Simone's marriage and other women's husbands, acting as though she knew everything there was to know about commitment and love. But when had she last examined her own circumstances? The apparently flawless marriage in heaven had fractures, and Simone wasn't the only one who had observed them. There had been times when her own relationship was under scrutiny, Heavenly sidestepped some questions, brushed off conversations that got too personal, and changed the topic. Simone publicly called her out for it, saying, "You keep bringing up divorce like you're waiting for mine to happen. But let's be honest, maybe you should be paying a little more attention to your own marriage instead of talking about mine." The room fell silent, and for the first time in a long time, Dr. Heavenly Kes had nothing to say. Took a surprising turn because the lady who had made a name for herself via ugly commentary and controversy had just been faced with the one thing she wasn't prepared to face: her own reality. What makes this tale unique is that the roles have been reversed. It's one thing to gossip, but it's quite another to bring up the same subject again as if it were a personal obsession. Dr. Heavenly Kimes has never been afraid to voice her thoughts, particularly on the relationships of others. Whether it's doubting someone's commitment, she has always had something to say when it comes to disparaging a spouse or making sly comments about divorce. But now fans are asking a more serious question. Why is she so obsessed with divorce? Let's face it, people are beginning to question if Heavenly has a deeper motive for her remarks, since she doesn't simply discuss the subject in passing or in passing. Rather, she brings it up repeatedly to the point where it seems personal. There's usually a reason why someone keeps bringing up a particular subject, and with Heavenly, it's beginning to seem more like projection than concern. Could it be that she sees something in her own marriage that she doesn't want to admit, or perhaps the cracks in her own relationship are beginning to show, and instead of addressing them, she's diverting herself by criticizing other people's marriages? After all, it's easier to blame someone else than to look in the mirror. If so, it explains why there is instability in paradise and why followers have begun to notice odd things. Heavenly enjoys discussing marriage, but when the topic turns to her own husband, Dr. Damon Kimes, she becomes extremely uncomfortable. She laughs it off, changes the topic, becomes defensive, and shuts people down when they dare to inquire about her own marriage. Let's face it, if someone is genuinely content in their relationship, they aren't fixated on. Perhaps Heavenly is overcompensating, using Simone's marriage as a shield to avoid talking about what's going on in her own home? If so, what is she hiding? Or does she just enjoy stirring up trouble? The idea of other people's divorces isn't something they are constantly hinting at, questioning, or interjecting into conversations that don't concern them. Heavenly has built her whole brand on drama, so maybe she simply loves it. She is the queen of shade, the master of stirring the pot, and she knows exactly how to get under people's skin. The best way to do that is to focus on what really matters in their marriage, because she knows that nothing will agitate someone more than raising doubts about their relationship. But here's the crazy part. She is messy, blunt, and brutally honest. Heavenly has been much too at ease analyzing other people's marriages, but she shuts it down when it comes to discussing her own. Ultimately, one thing is becoming apparent. Perhaps Heavenly's preoccupation with divorce isn't about Simone at all, but rather about herself. This is how you know things have become real, because the cast is now taking sides. So why does she talk so much about other couples but avoid talking about her own? The air in the room changed when Dr. Simone Whitmore finally yelled at Dr. Heavenly Kimes. This wasn't just another little dispute or a minor disagreement. Miscommunication for the longest time. Heavenly had been pushing the boundaries, trying Simone's patience, and constantly making disparaging remarks about divorce. Simone finally had enough, but now that she has called her out in public, the big question is who is actually on Simone's side. As expected, the ladies are split, and the cast is split. Some of the women fully get why Simone had to reprimand Heavenly, since they had observed her behavior pattern for years. There are those who are hesitant because Simone's approach to Heavenly wasn't just a clapback. It was an exposure. She didn't just check Heavenly for her constant gossiping. Instead, she flipped the script and put the spotlight on Heavenly's own marriage, and when that happened, Heavenly didn't seem so upset. Simone had every right to stand up for herself and set the record straight when someone called her out for it. Hidden truth behind her constant divorce talk. Now, the pressure is on because both Simone and Heavenly have faced backlash. War friendships are being tested, lines are being drawn, and nobody is backing down. The shocking part is that this fight may have changed everything. When Dr. Simone Whitmore finally lost it and confronted Dr. Heavenly Kimes, it sent shockwaves through the entire group. This wasn't just a small argument. It was years of tension, shade, and unspoken resentment that boiled over into one explosive moment, and now there's no turning back, because when you call someone out publicly in front of the group, dynamic has officially changed, and everyone is wondering what will happen next. The question is, can Simone and Heavenly ever be friends again? Let's face it, Simone and Heavenly's friendship has always been shaky. They've had their ups and downs, but this time feels different. This wasn't just a minor argument that could be laughed off later, it was personal and deep, and now people are wondering if this was the last straw, if there's any way for them to move on, or if we just witness the end of whatever friendship they still had because, let's face it, once you expose someone's hypocrisy in public, it's difficult to move on. Additionally, Heavenly has a history of harboring grudges and is not easily forgiving. If anyone believes she will simply brush this off and move on, they might want to reconsider. Will Heavenly finally learn her lesson, or will she continue the drama that fans have watched for years as she meddled in people's marriages through shady remarks and pretended that she was just being honest, but now that the roles have been reversed, she is the one being criticized, scrutinized, and people are demanding answers. Will she finally accept responsibility, cease discussing other people's relationships, or will she do what she always does and make things even messier? If history is any indication, Heavenly is not the kind to back down. And this could even encourage her to be even more ignore the group is split and everyone is taking sides now that Simone has called out Heavenly. The rest of the cast is being forced to decide where they stand. Some agree with Simone that it's time for someone to put Heavenly in her place because they are sick of her careless speech, while others believe Simone went too far and are concerned that criticizing Heavenly so openly will only make things worse and cause more drama.